Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. Hope you're all very well this evening. Hope you had a nice week. I want to say thanks to Chatty Rat and to Daily Blase for chatting with me before the live stream on Discord. So we had a very interesting chat, and we'll continue it here, I guess. So we're going to talk about tonight, of course, what's happening in the Gulf. World War III in the making, it seems. Donald Trump has now issued an ultimatum, or an unconditional surrender. He's calling for an unconditional surrender of Iran. So we're going to see how well that works out. There doesn't seem to be a plan apart from that. And it seems the right-wing press want the UK in particular to join in this adventure. Now, before we get to Donald Trump and the end of the world, I wanted to show you this interesting story here. Not a big story, but it's an interesting one, just to start us off. Manchester firm FK Construction collapses into administration. So Greater Manchester-based FK Construction has entered administration, appointing joint administrators David Hopkins and Paul Stanley of BTG, formerly OK. In the latest published results for the year ending March 2024, the firm reported pre-tax loss of 7.5 million compared to 25,917 in profit the previous year. So this company has gone in. Now, what's this got to do with anything? Well, FK Construction in 2025 donated £100,000 to Reform UK. Now, this company gone into administration, collapsing. Okay, it doesn't seem to be operating, or it's close to. It's operating with an administrator. Donated £100,000 to Reform UK. Why? It says here, FK Building Limited has made a total of £100,000 in the Form 1 individual donations. The average donation size was £100,000. The donations were distributed to 1 different parties. The donation was primarily directed at a select group of parties. Below is the recipient. So there was 100% went to Reform UK. And this company has now gone into administration. Wouldn't it make more sense? Nigel Farage and Reform keep talking about how, the party of business, the supporter of business. Well, surely they should have told this company, don't donate to us if you're going into administration. Okay? Don't donate to Reform UK if you don't have the money. But they took the money. Maybe Nigel Farage and Reform should give the money back to the company so they can actually pay their creditors and maybe their staff, if they have staff that are waiting for wages. Wouldn't that be a good thing to do? But I don't think that's actually going to happen. Just a really strange story. Nothing related to anything else really, but that's just an interesting story. 100,000 to deform FKing hell. It was said, Freckle Punny, yes. Probably money laundering. Well, it's a construction company, so yeah, they generally get involved in some dodgy business. Cowboy builders, maybe. I'm not saying that they are, but it's very strange you donate £100,000. Like a small company would donate £100,000 to Reform UK. Something very dodgy there. It should be investigated maybe, but of course it won't. Anyway, guys, let's move on. Another big story here tonight is Birmingham targeted in self-igniting parcel attacks. So this just dropped before the live stream. Russian intelligence is suspected of being behind several self-igniting parcel fires around Europe, including one in Birmingham. The Metropolitan Police said an investigation involving multiple countries was ongoing after several fires involving cargo. The fire at a DHL depot in Birmingham in July 2024 has been linked to other incidents on the continent. A 38-year-old Romanian national was arrested in the UK last year on suspicion of assisting a foreign intelligence agency. He was released but remains under investigation. This is really concerning. Now, it seems to be Russian attempts at sabotage, but it's not just in the UK but in Europe and the Canada, it seems, as well. They were also sent to the US and Canada, while 2 parcels bound for the North America were intercepted in Amsterdam. Because it's a very, very easy way to create these types of problems for the security services and to undermine national security. They probably have some tax loophole, that company, maybe. Not surprised, supplying intelligence to Iran. Yes, this was another story that came out today, that Russia was supplying intelligence to Iran. So Donald Trump's friend Putin is working against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump still is friends with Putin. Still admires Putin, even though he's undermining the United States and undermining US allies in the Gulf. Anyway, let's move on to another story here. Sorry, that was it there. Let me move on. So there has been this huge story going on about how Keir Starmer responded late to the attack in Cyprus. And in order to do this, they retrofitted, or they fixed up HMS Dragon, and is planning to send HMS Dragon to Cyprus to defend the base there. So I want to show you this clip from this account called BFMS Forces News, and they're speaking here about the problems that the Royal Navy face.
The fleet we've got, the ageing Type 23s in particular, and to a certain extent the Type 45s as well, have suffered from a lack of spares, a lack of maintenance effort. And so getting them out in sufficient numbers at sufficient readiness has been problematic. And having the sailors to operate all these ships has been a problem. The Navy over the previous 12 months lost something like, from memory, 1,500 sailors off the trained strength through sort of 2025. Now, we're doing better on recruitment, but 1,500 sailors is about 10 frigate ships companies worth. It's an extraordinary amount of expertise to lose. So yes, we're doing better on recruitment, and there's a real bulge of junior people coming through the system, but they all need to be trained and so on. So the real reason is aging ships, which are falling apart and haven't been maintained properly, and frankly have been overused and thrashed. So we don't have the hulls available. And secondly, even if we did have the hulls available, we probably wouldn't have the sailors to crew. As a nation, we haven't been prepared enough to say, look, there will be a crisis coming down the line. We don't know what it is, but we need to be ready for it. And navies in particular are large capital investments. And if you don't have them when the shooting starts, you're not going to have them. This one has come at a particularly inconvenient moment, but it could have been something else. You know, there's plenty of hazard and tension around Europe. There's plenty of tension and hazard around other parts of the world that could have kicked off. And if you don't have your Navy up and running, if you don't, you know, to use the old phrase, if you don't mend the roof while the sun's shining, then it's going to be much harder downstream.
That is completely correct, of course. And of course, is a former Commodore. The problem, as was pointed out by Frontes, is the Tories. The Tories decided we're going to cut the public services. We're going to cut public services, including the armed forces. We didn't recruit enough soldiers. We did not invest enough in the military, because the Conservatives believe in small government. That's what people don't seem to get. The Conservatives believe in small government, so they believe that we don't need police officers, we don't need armed forces, we don't need civil servants, we don't need all of these things. We can just reduce the size of everything and allow people to rely on the private sector. And when it comes to, for example, an issue like steel, Nigel Farage, I'm sorry to say, is completely correct. The steel industry should be nationalised because it's extremely important when it comes to, for example, shipbuilding or building tanks and stuff like this. So if you want to have a fully functional armed forces, you want to have a strong armed forces, a strong defence, you need to nationalise certain industries and you need to invest. Now, the response from the Conservatives today is, yeah, we need to invest in the military, but we need to cut welfare in order to do so. No, you don't need to cut welfare in order to do so. And of course, the Conservatives leave out the fact that 40% of the welfare budget goes on pensions. You notice the Conservatives don't say much about that because, of course, that's their voting base. So they'll criticise the welfare bill and say it needs to come down, but when they talk about how they would cover the cost or where the savings, quote unquote, should be made, it's always about people on benefits. It's always about the disabled. They need to be forced into jobs, or lazy people. They never talk about pensions, and they certainly never talk about the triple lock. So if they want to rebuild the military, you can't just take people's support away. You need to borrow, you need to tax. And there are a lot of very rich people who should be asked to fork out a bit more for the sake of the nation. You know, the Tories keep saying you need to protect the realm, but we better not tax the people who have lots of money in order to protect the realm. No. What we need to do is we need to punish people who have nothing, the disabled, people on PIP, people who are just scraping to get by, people who are working and on universal credit. We need to punish those people, take money from them in order to rebuild the armed forces. But don't touch the richest people in society. This is why it's necessary to have a radical approach. You need to have a radical approach in a situation like this. And Rachel Reeves has an opportunity where she could say, okay, we had these fiscal rules, we had these conditions we had to maintain, but there is a new situation in town. Donald Trump has invaded Iran. The rule book has to go out the window. We have to act radically. We have to act differently. We can no longer stay, within the rules. And look at what's happened this week. Energy prices have gone through the roof. Now, the saving grace is that when it comes to domestic users, according to, I think it was Octopus Energy this morning, he was on Times, the CEO of Octopus Energy was on Times Radio, and he said, look, for people who have a locked-in tariff, they should be okay for the time being. But if this war continues on for 6 months, energy prices will definitely go up and people will start to feel the pain. But people will start to feel the pain in other ways because obviously petrol prices are going up, diesel prices are going up. The price for other things are going to go up as well because that extra inflation is going to find its way through the economy. Would it be the same as Trident system that the US has a guidance system, information for that, and they could turn it off if anytime they want? Yes, the problem with Trident is that you need the go-ahead of the US in order to deploy it, whether to use the missiles. The missile system is operated, I think operated by the US. So the submarines themselves are British, but the guidance system or the weapon system is US based. So you need actually the permission of the US to fire it. It's not exactly a great deterrent, is it? If you need somebody else's permission, especially if that other person is Donald Trump. Thankfully for household gas and electricity, it's not spring, nor summer, nor winter, but obviously knock-on effect elsewhere. Yeah, so that's also a little bit of a saving grace that we're not in the middle of winter, so most people will not need their heating on all the time or on at all. So that's a little bit of a saving. But of course, when it comes to energy prices, they're coupled to gas. So if gas prices go up, energy prices will go up. Now, once again, I'm not an expert on this, but from what I've heard, people should be okay for the meanwhile because of locked-in tariffs, or if somebody's on a variable tariff, that could be different. Not just energy costs, anything that needs transportation, food, clothing, electronics will increase in price. You're right, Freckled Pony, yes. Because if it costs, I don't know, £2 today to transport something, well, the cost of fuel is going up dramatically. It could be £4, and that £4 has to be, that extra £2 has to be passed on to the consumer. Liam Devlin, great to see you on the stream. My car has frost on it right now. Oh my goodness, that's a bit chilly tonight. Multitasking at the moment. Para opening ceremony and making a drink and listening. Cool. Have a nice one. Also, the strait is important for fertilizer, so agriculture, and therefore food prices will spike too. Oh, great. This is why it's so important that chancellors or finance ministers realize, look, we can't go by the old rules. We need to take a different approach. Okay, let's move on to a little bit deeper into all of this. So, Kimi Badenoch presses Starmer to strike Iranian missile sites. We're hearing from both Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch, and the right-wing press. Keir Starmer needs to get involved here. We need to get more involved. Forget about what happened 20 years ago. 25 years ago almost. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has stepped up her calls for the government to authorise the RAF to strike Iranian missiles launch sites. The UK has given permission for the US to use British bases to conduct defensive strikes on the facilities, but has not taken part in the action itself. RAF jets are shooting down missiles and drones fired by Iran at allies in the region. See, the problem here is that in order to do this, you would need Parliament on board, no? Kemi Badenoch is not calling for Parliament to have a vote. She just wants the government to authorise the RAF to respond in this way or to attack these sites. But what if the RAF planes are shot down? What if a pilot is captured? Then what happens? This could create a crisis, another crisis. I'm not saying that the RAF should not defend itself and should not defend its air bases and its assets in the Middle East. It should certainly do that. But what Kemi Badenoch is calling for is war, to go to war with Iran. At a time when we just seen a story about how the Navy isn't ready. It doesn't have the manpower and it doesn't have the equipment. So if the Navy isn't ready, why the heck is Kemi Badenoch calling for the government to support strikes? Or if a pilot is killed, yes. It's potentially worse if the pilot is kidnapped, is caught, because then you'd have to engage in some sort of negotiations with the Iranians. I'm not from the point of view of the armed forces. They of course they would prefer the pilot to survive and of course survive. But from a political point of view, it could potentially be worse if the pilot was captured, because we saw during Vietnam how they were used for propaganda purposes, and that's against the rules. You cannot have Deeper and Badenoch in the same it's yeah, she's pretty terrible. I dropped a video tonight with Kemi Badenoch, and she's like saying, the pilots are hanging around. I don't know if you saw that clip. And then she was saying, more countries need to get involved in order to de-escalate the situation. More countries need to get involved in order to de-escalate the situation. Does she actually understand what de-escalation means? James Humphreys, thank you so much for that super job. Very kind of you. Do you follow Richard R. Murphy? He makes the statement, everything is funded, and we have the tax to keep control of information. Sorry, the screen is jumping. Let me scroll back up again. Sorry, a second. Do you follow Richard J. Murphy? I certainly do. I'm a huge admirer of The Economist, or he's not economist. He's a tax expert. He's a chartered accountant, but he's like an economist the way he speaks. He's really well informed. The statement, everything is funded, and we have tax to keep control of inflation. He also says that the government works opposite of a household. Yes, 100%. And this is a huge criticism I have of politicians who keep using this household narrative. Yeah, we have to operate within, we have to balance the books and stuff like that. Governments don't need to do that. They don't need to spend what they take in, or they don't need to keep within that. And he's made that statement perfect, or that argument perfectly on a number of occasions, and he's completely correct. If the government wants to raise finance, they can do it. They're not like a household. And if you want to protect people during this crisis, you need to increase support for them. The government needs this at the moment, and we don't know how long this crisis is going to last. So it makes sense for the government to prepare for a plan B, to prepare for some sort of support for the country. Otherwise, if they're just hoping that this will all blow over after a few days and it doesn't, they're going to find themselves in a worse situation than it is now, because energy prices are going through the roof. And if the Gulf states are blocked, and if you look at what's happening in Dubai at the moment, Now, Dubai is just a microcosm of the problem. People are fleeing Dubai. You know, it's difficult to post videos because you get arrested, thrown in jail, and given a massive fine. That's why you don't see many videos of Dubai at the moment. But whatever ones I have seen before it was blocked, empty streets, empty restaurants, empty bars. The city has been emptied. And sadly, there's a horrible story I was reading about how residents of Dubai, you know, the foreigners, the Europeans, the Brits, the Americans, the people who moved there for tax reasons, they're abandoning their animals, which is disgraceful. But they're leaving because they don't feel safe there. And the whole point of Dubai was you can move there, you don't pay any taxes, and it's perfectly safe. How many clips did you hear? You know, you see online about how, wow, it's so safe. You know, you have people from Reform UK. I'm moving to Dubai because it's safer than living in London. It's not too safe now. And of course, if this goes on for a long period, Dubai will lose its reputation for being safe. And it's going to be difficult for them to win that back. Water, Max. Water is also... if the desalination plants are attacked, they won't have fresh water. And that's going to be a big problem. Because, of course, they're in the middle of a frigging desert. Dubai by Dick and Isabel. Richard Tice and Isabel Oakeshott live. He lives half his time in Dubai and half the time in London, or is he in his constituency of, was it Skegness? Fleets of Lambos gathering dust at the airports, probably. There was an interesting clip a guy posted on social media about how it's a place without any culture, without any soul. It's not like a normal city. It's a bit of a hole. Isabel Oakeshott should be feeling a bit embarrassed right now, but she doesn't. She's immune to embarrassment. She's immune to humiliations. Doesn't really feel it. Anyway, staying with this, I wanted to move on to this story here, which demonstrates once again that Donald Trump doesn't have a plan. And this is part of the major problem here.
And then what is that off-ramp? I think the president may simply declare victory. He'll say, got rid of the Ayatollah. We diminished or degraded or destroyed their nuclear program again. We did the same thing to the missile program. We did the same thing to the Navy. And as to the regime, well, over to the Iranian people. Good luck to them. Hope they succeed. And if they don't, it's their fault. If they do, we'll take the credit. How Iran responds to that remains to be seen. And then what?
So this is former Secretary of State Blinken, who was with the Biden administration. And he's completely correct here. You know, there is no plan. It's just hope that it all goes away. It's like, you know, and then declare victory. As we saw with Gaza. Donald Trump, see, I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize because I delivered peace in the Middle East. Forget it. There's a wonderful image below here. Mission accomplished. Do you remember that? Back in 2003. Yeah, we've succeeded in the Middle East. We've removed Saddam Hussein and we delivered peace to Iraq. That was that didn't last very long. That aged like milk in the sun. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see something very similar when it comes to Iran. Donald Trump said, yeah, we succeeded, done. Okay, let's move on. He's already talking. Trump is already talking about Cuba. We need regime change in Cuba. Cuba is close to collapsing, not because the Trump administration is bombing it, but because they have completely blockaded it. Hospitals are without energy, without light, without electricity in some cases. Homes, people are burning wood, scrap wood, to keep warm, to feed themselves, to light fires. People are not able to access healthcare. People are not able to access food. The country is collapsing. And Trump is just waiting for it all to fall apart, and then he'll stick Marco Rubio in there to be the new viceroy or whatever. And the sanctions, yes. The blockade and the sanctions that have been going on since, the 1950s or 1960s. Don't rescue Isabel Oakeshott. That should be a campaign. They can't erase the ideology, no matter how many bombs they get dropped. And as we've seen in the past, the more you bomb a place, the less likely people are going to be greeting you with open arms. It generally... There seems to be this mentality that neocons, be them in the United States or in Europe, don't seem to get. If somebody comes up and punches you continually in the face, are you more likely to be on their side or on the side of somebody who says, hey, I want them to stop punching you in the face? Okay, you mightn't like me, but I want them to stop punching you in the face. Who are you going to be more aligned with? Much more difficult to run because of, at least when the US went into Iraq, went in together, Donald Trump is going in pretty much alone. Well, Israel is supporting him, but there is no plan, at least in this case. There was some sort of a plan. Yeah, we get rid of Saddam Hussein and then we inject democracy into the area. But Donald Trump isn't even going in with that. We don't even know what Donald Trump's plan is. And maybe Blinken is right here when he says the plan is just to declare victory. Done. Let's forget about it. The media stop talking about Iran, and you'll end up with a situation where there's civil war. You're going to end up with factions fighting each other. And it won't be reported in the media because the media has moved on. That's the sad reality. But I don't think the Gulf nations will be too happy about that because they need security. And the Trump administration have guaranteed their security for decades. And now they won't be able to do that anymore. So, of course, these shenanigans are coming at a massive cost to not just the United States and Iran, but to the global economy.
We're not yet a week in, but there's all sorts of implications that are already becoming clear for the global economy, but also different parts of the world from what's happening in Iran. And, just to kind of update on the various different events that have happened. What has been going on in the last few days is the kind of horror story that economists have been telling themselves for decades and decades about what is the worst single thing that can happen to the global economy. Well, it's kind of happening right now. So the Straits of Hormuz are effectively closed. I'll show you a chart on that in a second. You've got the world's biggest oil terminal that is basically down, Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia. You've got the world's biggest gas terminal, Ras Laffan, that is down as well, all because of drone attacks from Iran. You've got tanker attacks all through the Gulf and particularly around the Straits, but including in the north end of the Persian Gulf. Like I say, this is the kind of thing that scary scenarios built by economists have been kind of talking about for years. But what's the impact? And this is where things get kind of interesting and nuanced, because you might have thought with that happening, the oil price would go crazy. And it's certainly gone a lot higher. Look at that. Up by 15% in the last few days. But it hasn't gone up as much as the gas price. And here's where things get kind of interesting. So this is the gas price, actually in the UK. And that's up by 70%. And actually at one point, you can see the line has just about come down. At one point, it was up by 100%. So it doubled. So why is there that difference between oil and gas? Well, in part, it's literally just a physical thing. It's quite hard to store gas, and so your kind of sensitivity to what's going on in the market is slightly greater. But to some extent, it's also something else. So if you look, for instance, at the oil market, it's quite well stocked at the moment. What do I mean by that? Well, this is showing you demand for oil in recent years, and then there's a kind of projection there. And then look at supply, so this red line here. And you can see supply recently has been running above demand. So there's quite a lot of oil flowing out there. And the corollary of that is that quite a lot of that has gone into storage. So the stocks, oil stocks, every country around the world has some degree of oil storage. It's easier to store, like I say, than it is gas. You can store gas, but it's just a bit harder. But oil stocks have been rising in the run-up to what's happening now in Iran. So there's a little bit of reassurance there that, look, for oil, we're kind of relatively...
Okay, but why are petrol prices going up? Why are diesel prices going up?
Well equipped as things go. However, it should be said, okay, so this is oil stocks mostly outside the Middle East, outside the Gulf. It's a totally different story if you're looking at oil stocks within the Middle East. Here, oil stocks are kind of a problem different countries here, now these are all oil producers, so it's a different thing, have a certain amount of leeway, a certain amount of storage that they can put their oil into if they can't get it out. But it's not that much. So Iraq, 6 days, Kuwait, 14 days, the UAE, 19, and so on and so forth. And why does this matter? Okay, well, have a look at this. Okay, so most of these countries will be hoping to get their oil. This is what has always happened. You drill your oil, you pump it out, and you ship it onto tankers through the Straits of Hormuz. That's the way things work. But if you can't do that, if you can't get the oil out, then you have to do something, and you basically kind of exhaust all of that storage time. So in the case of Iraq, 6 days, and Kuwait, not much more. Then after that period, you have to do radical things like starting to shut down your production. And when you start shutting down production, that's a real problem for oil facilities. Sometimes you can cause long-term damage that basically means you're just not going to get as much oil out in the future. That's kind of what's happened in Venezuela recently. So there's real profound questions about how long this lasts and how long the Straits of Hormuz is essentially closed. And when I say essentially closed, well, there's been all this talk about, is it closed, isn't it closed? Well, this shows you tankers going in and out straight.
Yeah, it's not closed, it's just not safe to pass.
Straits of Hormuz in recent months. Attacks begin, look at what happens to those flows. I mean, it's basically closed. It's basically closed in profound, pragmatic terms. And that has serious consequences, that will kind of mount up the more time elapses. But as I was saying a second ago, it's not just oil and gas. Okay, so obviously we focus a lot on oil and gas, but there are products that are made from oil and gas that are also incredibly important. Think about like jet fuel, kerosene. That is up by 52%. And this is kind of a price actually measured in Singapore, up by 52%. Right now, they're going to be getting more expensive because that is an extraordinarily sharp increase. And why is that going up quite so quickly, more quickly than oil? It's because it's really hard to store kerosene. So it's back to that pragmatic question about how much storage of this stuff do we actually have. Fertilizer. So a lot of fertilizer, kind of, getting 30-40% of the world's fertilizer.
And when are you putting fertilizer in the ground? Around this time of year?
So that also comes from the Gulf. It passes through the Straits of Hormuz, anticipating that the prices are up by 30% since January. And if you look at other things, so, this is rather more obscure, but nonetheless, you'll see pretty important. Helium. Who knew? Helium. Actually, for the most part, it is made in the process of kind of refining natural gas. And so a third of the world's helium comes from Qatar. Well, that's not happening right now. It's not being produced because Ras Laffan is down, so you're just not getting that. 1/3 of the world's helium. That is significant not just for party balloons for kids' parties. If you want to run an MRI scanner, you need helium, because what's helium really good for? It's good for cooling things down to kind of near absolute zero temperatures. That's exactly what you need for an MRI scanner, because it needs to run these superconducting magnets. You can't do anything superconducting. You can't run quantum computers. The future of computing, you need helium for it. And a lot of that helium, all of a sudden, it's not available anymore. You see where this is going. All of these unexpected knock-on consequences from what's happening in Iran at the moment.
Shouldn't we thank Donald Trump? Wasn't it such a wonderful idea to go to engage in this war with no plan in place? All of this with no plan in place. So the entire world economy is going to suffer because Donald Trump just didn't know what the hell he was doing. Anyway, guys, let's move on because let me read some of your comments. Bush Sr. went to war, crashed the economy. Bush Jr. went to war, crashed the economy. Donald J. Trump went to war, crashed the economy. Third time's a charm. Isn't the human race doomed? Yes, pretty much so. Aren't we lucky GB energy will help during these times? Oh wait, it's just a con. Yeah, wasn't that meant to bring down energy prices and create lots of jobs? Trump thinks there is... he's been rambling about North Sea resources. Who knows? Perhaps he wants to go for Norway too. Yeah, not the UK, because once again, the oil in the North Sea is more expensive to extract. There is still stuff there, but it's more expensive to extract. And if the price goes up, maybe it becomes a little bit more feasible. But once again, the price will not be the cost of it will be the same because it's sold on the international market. Anyone who's selling you the idea of if we extract oil and gas from the North Sea, we can deal with this crisis are lying to you. Oh no, did nobody think about the helium? You learned something on this live stream. You learned something from Sky News. The road to hell is paved with unintended consequences. Yes. Why? Why did Trump do this? Well, it seems because Israel wanted to. Israel wanted to get rid of the regime in Iran, and Donald Trump goes, okay. That seems to be the only real motivation there. Because if you think about what happened on the very first day, and this spells it out for you. Normally what the US military do when they carry out an attack is they carry it out in the middle of the night in order to catch the enemy off guard. Instead, when it came to Iran, this time around, they attacked in early morning. Why did they do that? Because Israel wanted to take out... So it seems to be there was a two-pronged approach. Israel was going after the leadership, and the United States was going after missile sites and stuff like that. But in order to take out the leaders, they had to do it in the late morning because maybe the Ayatollah was going for his coffee or something like that. So they decided we want to get him in the late morning. So it was like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. So Israel had decided the attack will take place at this time. So the US military did not decide the time of the attack. Israel did. It's not usual that the US would go along with another nation's decision-making process. It's usually the US that decides. Look at NATO. The US decides NATO's strategies, not the UK or Germany or Italy or Denmark or any other country in NATO. Who's the boss? That's just the reality. I'm not saying this is really, the motivation behind this, but it certainly looks like that. The US started at a disadvantage in order to satisfy the Israelis. The tail that wags the US dog. What a terrible idea to talk about the e-files. Yes, we do. It seems that the Department of Justice have deleted, by accident probably, a lot of the Epstein files for some reason. Isn't that just a shame? And what happened to the UFOs? Remember, Donald Trump was going to release all these UFO files. That all disappeared as well. Was Epstein an alien? Okay, so I was like, yeah, we'll talk about it, and then let's go to war to distract the public from both the Epstein files and the alien files. So, once again, the UFOs, what happened to them? They all were forgotten about. I didn't forget about them. Oh, my goodness. Moving on. It seems Donald Trump wants to do a bit of a U-turn. This is an interesting story I wanted to show you here. Have a listen to this.
Many countries opened up their prisons and dropped them into the United States. Those are the people who are getting out. And we have a lot of heart. They said, you got to lighten up on this. We have a lot of heart for people. They came in illegally, but they're good people, and they're working now on farms, and they're working in luncheonettes and hotels and all. And we're looking to get the criminals out right now, the criminals. And I think it's very important. I mean, every once in a while you see a story, we take somebody. He should be out because they came in illegally. So in theory, they should be, but we're focused.
In theory. So has Donald Trump done a U-turn on immigration? Remember, Donald Trump was all about, hey, you need to vote for me to get rid of all these immigrants because they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they're all criminals. I'm the only one who will close the border and kick out all these immigrants. Now it seems he's changed his tune. Could it be because small business owners are like going, hey, we actually need these people. We hoped that the MAGA people who sit on their sofa eating crisps all day, they would be coming out and picking fruit and vegetables, but they have decided not to do that. So instead, we need the immigrants to work in our packing plants. We need the immigrants to pick fruit and vegetables. We need the immigrants to do deliveries, to work in our restaurants, to look after our children. We need all these immigrants. And Donald Trump kicking them out has become a bit of a problem for us. So we would like you to do a bit of a U-turn. And it seems that Donald Trump is doing that. The midterms, Max. Yes, probably. The Republicans are like, we're in serious shit. Stop on the immigration stuff. It's not helping us. Just don't go back 100%. Just say that you're going after the criminals. So everyone is happy with that. But it seems he sacked his head of, Homeland Security. So she's gone. And the guy who looked like a Nazi, he's gone as well. So these people were acting too tough, it seems. So Donald Trump has decided to put in somebody a bit more palatable. But I think the damage has already been done. It's like the immigrants are not going to be flooding back into doing these jobs anytime soon. You know, you sort of burnt your bridges with them. You know, people were afraid. People who had nothing to fear, nothing to be fearful of legally, were afraid to go to work. It wasn't just the people who had overstayed their visas or who had not respected the conditions of their visas, people who are entering the country illegally. It's not just them. It was also people who had been living in the United States for years. They were afraid to go to work because ICE would pick them up and see about deporting them. Steve Nazi Miller gone, Max? No, not that guy. It was a different one. It was the guy with the ICE for a period. He was replaced. He was sent to Texas. Reagan demanded that Castro release all his prisoners, and he did, and let them sell to Florida. It's probably Marco Rubio's parents or something like that. Greg Bovine, maybe that was it. It's just a policy of international cruelty. Yeah, look, has Donald Trump turned over a new leaf? Of course not. This is about pandering. This is about, hey, we're not evil. we care about small business owners. We're going to go a bit easier now. So this will convince people that Donald Trump's on their side. But I think the damage has been done. It's about the economy, stupid. Once I keep saying this, Donald Trump is going to suffer the consequences if people feel that the situation is not getting better. And there was news out today from the US labor figures, which show the worst situation since the financial crisis of 2007-2008. Not COVID, the financial crisis. Not good. So obviously this is not going to convince a lot of people that Donald Trump is doing a good job. And we have to remember this. Most people don't vote on policy. Most people don't even vote based on personality. They vote based on the current situation. And if people feel that the current situation is not getting better, they'll try their hand at somebody else. They'll give somebody else a chance. Doesn't matter who that person is. And I've mentioned this before. People voted for a rapist. People voted for a convicted felon. People voted for a guy who lies through his teeth. They were willing to vote for that because they were not happy with the previous administration. They felt the situation is not getting better. People can't buy a house. My kids can't buy a house. People can't get health care. All of these things. They were of course jumping from the frying pan into the fire, but they were willing to give Donald Trump a chance. And did it work out for them? Of course not. And of course, not everything will be above board. But once again, it doesn't. If Donald Trump, a convicted felon, and a rapist, a sex pest, or whatever the hell you want to call him, was able to get in twice, it's because people were not happy with the previous administration. So once again, there are the people on the extremes, people who will never vote for a Democrat. Those people are beyond the pale. There are people who would never vote for Donald Trump. Those people are those two groups can be excluded. People who vote based on policy, people who vote based on personality. If you eliminate all of those, the last group left, the majority, are people who just vote based on their own current situation. And Donald Trump isn't doing a very good job at the moment. And it's looking more and more likely that if everything goes as normally, he'd be removed. He's really messed up. And people would be more willing to give somebody else a chance. I'd like to see AOC run for president, I think she would do a good job. Or there are a number of progressive people in the Democratic Party. But I fear that they'll put Kamala Harris back in. Give her another go. It was her turn. And while she would likely win, I don't think she'd be good for most people. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a radical change in US politics. There needs to be a sort of Mandami type figure going in who's going to really change things for ordinary people, who'll side with ordinary people as opposed to the mega rich. And the Democrats, if they put in somebody like Kamala Harris, she will, of course, align herself with the mega rich. The mega rich will be like, okay, business as usual. Trump is gone. Now we have somebody else in, and they're going to do exactly as Trump was doing, funneling more money to the private sector, more money to the rich, cutting taxes for them, cutting regulations for them. It's, just because the new one will be a bit more palatable in public, he's not going to make an idiot of themselves. The mega rich don't care about that. Their priorities are very different. Speaking of losers, I wanted to show you this story a few more stories before we finish. This is absolutely wonderful. So I met a Green Council. Let me increase the size of the screen so you can see a little bit better. So Nigel Farage had on a guy called Martin Abrams, and Martin is a Green councillor who was grilling. I don't know, how can we say it? Nigel Farage was attempting to grill him over so-called family voting in the recent Gorton and Denton by-election, but he was well able to hold his own. Actually, no, not this one. I wanted to show you this one instead, which is a little bit better.
Well, we're now 1 week on from the Gorton and Denton by-election, and Matt and Reform UK are still whinging about the result. And let's be clear, outside of Reform's bubble, to most people, it looks like you are sore losers. And that explains why Matt has been trending on Twitter this week as Matt Badloss. And I really do think it's time that Matt accepts the result. He's been on our TV screens pretty much non-stop for a week. I think it's time he goes to bed and wakes up tomorrow and just moves on.
Sectarian.
Perfect. What did I say? As soon as Matt Goodwin lost, he would spend zero time in the constituency. He'd be back in London and he'd be on GB News. And that's exactly what he's doing. Back in London on GB News, complaining about him losing, complaining that the election was stolen in a sense, that it was family voting that was going on, and that's why he lost. Not because Reform didn't actually offer the public anything. And they didn't offer the public anything. Reform were offering them nothing. They were saying, vote for us and we'll stop the boats. Vote for us and we'll close the borders. Vote for us and we won't legalise drugs like the crazy Greens. That was their entire platform.
Has been a word that's being used quite a lot now, Martin, and we showed the example of the Urdu campaign. Do you think it's a bit cynical to be using those sorts of campaigns, or do you think this is just part of modern Britain?
I mean, that's just dog whistle politics. Let's just look at the polling that's come out this week.
Because he's going on, Reform UK TV, and the Reform UK guy is like, I can't respond to, I can't come out and defend Reform because that'd just give away the game. So I have to pretend like I'm an impartial journalist. Kavanagh, thanks so much for that super chat.
The Greens are now the most popular party amongst all voters under 65, leading by 6 points. So, we are in the ascendancy. Okay. And, we are becoming the main challenger to Reform UK's divisive politics. And, we, throughout that by-election campaign, we maintained a relentless focus on the cost of living crisis. That is what won us the election. And in Hannah Spencer, a local candidate, not from the home counties, but a working class plumber.
And that's something I said as well. And I'm a huge advocate for people running in the area. People, carpetbaggers coming in from outside, people parachuted in. I don't think it's good for democracy. it should be people from the area, because people from the area understand. And I don't care which party we're talking about. If the Greens put somebody in from London or whatever, I'd be against that as well. It should be somebody from the local area, because they have a connection to the local area and they understand the problems facing the local area. Like somebody from London wouldn't understand the problems of people of Manchester. In the same way, somebody from Manchester probably wouldn't understand the problems facing people in London.
She radiated authenticity, and it's because we had a fantastic candidate and we talked about the things that people really care about.
And Martin, the other thing, of course, that's come up is the Democracy Volunteers statements as well. They said they were concerned about the family voting.
You know what's interesting about these democracy? I'm not saying that they don't organise. They were set up by an ex-Liberal Democrat, no problem there. But what I find strange about them is that they never reported any of this to the police. They never reported it to the authorities during the election. Like if they saw something underhand, if they saw some illegal activity going on, why didn't they report it to the police at the time? And why didn't they report it to the council? They waited until after the election was over, and then who did they go to? They went to the media. Like if somebody... Can you imagine a situation? You are, I don't know, you're looking out the window of your house and you see somebody committing a crime. And you don't call the police. You wait until the person has left the scene. And then instead of going to the police, you call a journalist and say, hey, I saw a crime being committed outside my house. Does that sound normal to you? Or would it be more normal if you see a crime being committed, you immediately get on the phone and call the police? That's what a normal person would do. I'm not saying that this organization is fake or anything like that, but I find it really difficult that the organization that's supposed to be there to monitor democracy, protect democracy, decided not to intervene, not to report this to the authorities at the time, and not report it finally to the police, but went to the media instead.
Situation in the by-election. Do you think that's played a role in the victory for Hannah Spencer?
I mean, Hannah won by 4,000 votes. It was a landslide victory. And that's why this whole thing with Reform UK now reporting it to the police smacks of them being sore losers. And that's what is coming across to people.
Isn't it interesting that Reform UK reported it to the police, not the actual organisation?
I've talked to many people since the by-election, and that is the vibe that people are getting from Reform UK. And I think Reform really need to look at themselves. Over the past few months, they have welcomed Tory MP after Tory MP into their circle, and people are seeing them for what they really are. They're a Conservative Party tribute act. They're a Conservative Party tribute act that is just spewing
like, get this guy off the camera, get him off the show. He's telling too much truth.
Divisive politics, and now they're seen as sore losers.
Okay, Martin, can I just quickly come in here? So,
we have Martin. We have Matt Badloss himself.
This isn't about being a sore loser. For 10 years, people on the left, such as yourself, the Greens and Labour, have talked endlessly about election interference, about the role of Russia, about the role of Cambridge Analytica, about the role of all...
Yes, because there was actual evidence there. There was an investigation and there was evidence. Do you actually have any evidence that there was some sort of shenanigans going on? Once again, it's so strange that the organisation that's supposed to be monitoring this did not go to the police. Reform went to the police. What evidence did Reform have? Why didn't Reform report this to the council authorities and the police? Really strange.
All of these things that you've tried to tell us are responsible for things like Brexit and Trump and everything else. Now, here I am, basing my analysis on an impartial independent report, saying it's not the only reason the Greens won Gorton and Denton. No one's saying that. But what we saw, and what nobody in the Green Party wants to discuss, was widespread electoral malpractice, if not open fraud. Now, I want to have a national conversation about that. I accept I lost. I can...
No, you don't. Why the hell don't you F off? You're like Liz Truss. You lose and you still hang around. Go away, Matt. No one wants to see you anymore. GB News, of course, give you a platform because you're Reform UK. Are there any other losers that have been given a platform on GB News? It's always people like the Conservatives and Reform. Somebody from Reform or somebody from the Conservatives lose their seat, give them a job on GB News. I think there was a next Labour one, but she's on the right, so she's, of course, at home there as well. But he's a sore loser. He doesn't accept that he lost. He said, I accept that I lost, but, forget what I said before. Now I want you to focus on why I lost. And why I lost, of course, is because of these electoral shenanigans. Look, if there were some sort of underhanded operation going, see, the thing is, what he's trying to do is he's trying to sow doubt in the minds of the public that the Greens won this fair and square. If there were some people involved in some sort of illegal activity, how do you know it was them voting for the Greens? They could have been voting for Reform. They could have been voting for the Labour Party. They could have been voting for the Liberal Democrats. They could have been those 5 or 6 people that voted for the Conservatives or the monster raving loony party. How do you know it's because of the Greens? See, his argument sort of falls apart as well, because if this had been a tight vote, a tight result, a very small majority, then maybe he could be able to sell this message a bit stronger that there was some sort of shenanigans. But she won by 4,000 votes. You lost, Matt. Go away. He's hanging around like a bad fart. Thanks, Peter. Yes, he's a horrible individual. He's a charlatan, and he wants to undermine the democratic process because he wants to go. He wants to run again. He's even said it himself. I'm going to run in the next general election. I'm looking for another seat where there's a chance for me to win. I'm a carpetbagger. I'm a parachute candidate. I don't care about the public. I don't care about the constitution. Right? I said if he won or whether he won or lost, he would spend as much time in the constituency as Nigel Farage does in Clacton. Where is Nigel Farage today? Is he in Clacton? No, he's in not even in Washington. He's in Mar-a-Lago.
Congratulate Hannah Spencer, but there are millions of people that can look at this by-election and they can see it exactly for what it is: sectarian voting, which is not British.
Political parties reach out to religious groups all the time. Be them Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. They do it all the time. Matt Goodwin had his big blue bus, and he had some Sikh members of the Sikh community wearing blue turbans. You know, the turquoise turbans. Was that not religious? Was that not sectarianism, reaching out to a particular community to get their vote? Why is it okay when it's everyone but the Muslims? If you reach out to the Muslims, then that's sectarian. But if you reach out to the Jews, no. If you reach out to the Sikhs, no. If you reach out to Protestants, no. If you reach out to Catholics, no. That's not sectarian. These people don't actually understand what sectarian means. Matt Goodwin should go to Northern Ireland, and then he'd understand what sectarianism is.
Putting religious, tribal allegiances above our national interest. And I just want to fix it, Martin. Will you help us actually have this debate? Let's restrict family voting. It's illegal. Let's restrict postal voting. It is
illegal. How do you restrict something that's illegal? We restrict it, it's illegal. It's illegal. It shouldn't happen. If it happens, it should be reported and the police should be involved. Why were the police not involved? The police were asked about this and they said that there were no cases reported to them. It's all very suspect. First, you have this democracy organization saying that they saw stuff, but they didn't report it to the authorities running the election, and they didn't report it to the police. They instead reported it to the media. And then after, you have Nigel Farage's party reporting it to the police. Reporting what to the police? We never got to see the report. I don't know if we'll ever see the report. But the police are investigating something, allegedly, but we don't know what they're investigating. But Matt Goodwin wants you to believe that it's family voting. But once again, family voting is illegal. So if it was carried out, then people who were there and saw it should have reported to the police, but they did not. So there are two possibilities. People didn't bother, then maybe they didn't believe it was serious, or it didn't happen. Okay, which is it? Matt Goodwin's an accuser, a serial abuser. He's bigotry. It's lost. Hooray. His new name's Matt Bad Loser. Thanks, Wee Scott's dog. Mike might make his own QR shirt. Big QR on back. But they say, "Oh, you noisy bastard." Get the fuck. Matt Goodwin could try his luck in Foyle and Fermanagh, South Tyrone, or another Ulster constabulary constituencies such as Donegal or Cavan. Oh, yes. One final story before we go. I just wanted to cover this before we finish for tonight. Failed asylum seeker families to be offered up to £40,000 to leave the UK. So the Home Secretary has come up with a plan, and I think it's in a sense a reasonable plan, but from a political point of view, it's an absolute disaster. Families of failed asylum seekers will be offered up to £40,000 to leave the UK under a trial scheme announced by the Home Secretary, Shamana Mahmood. Mahmood said the government would seek to forcibly remove failed asylum seekers if they do not accept incentive payments of up to £10,000 per person, capped at 4 per family within 7 days. The scheme is expected to target around 150 families living in taxpayer-funded accommodation, and the Home Office estimates that it could save £20 million if successful. However, the Conservatives and Reform said the payments would incentivize people to come to the UK illegally. Okay, this has already been done before. So when the Conservatives and Reform, who are basically the Conservatives, say, hey, you should not be doing this, they in a sense did it before. But why is this a good idea, but why is it politically bad? So from an economic point of view, it makes perfect sense. It costs a huge amount of money to deport somebody who doesn't want to be deported. And I'm not just talking about appeals. I'm talking about the actual removal and deportation of someone. Because if you imagine, you give somebody £10,000, say, look, here's £10,000. If you leave, people will just leave. They'll go on a normal flight and they'll be out of the country. But if you have to deport somebody, then you need a chartered flight, and you also need to take that person to an airfield or to the airport. How do you do that? Well, you need security, and security is extremely expensive. So you need people to go to the accommodation, go to the place, arrest the individual or detain them, take them to the airport under guard, because these people don't want to go, so they are likely to cause a bit of trouble, along with their family, load them onto a plane, secure the plane, a chartered flight, and then you have to fly them to another country. That's really frigging expensive. Now, the response from Reform and the Conservatives and their supporters is, well, you just deport people. Yes, but if people don't want to go, they can create problems. So you need, if somebody doesn't want to go, it's going to be very difficult to get them on a normal flight. So you need to have a chartered flight, which is extremely expensive. And you need to you can't fill the plane with people because it has to be secure. So it's likely you're going to have a few people on that plane, and it's expensive to transport a very few people because you have each individual and you have at least 2 security guards, not just 1, but 2. Because if it's a big person, they have to be, held down or whatever. That's the reality. Now, politically, it's an absolute disaster because it's been seen as compensating or rewarding people who have broken the rules, because we're talking about people who have no right to stay. Okay, let's be frank about that. Somebody who has put in an asylum claim has failed, they have to be deported. Somebody who has overstayed their visa or not respected the conditions of their visa, they have to be deported. You have to have these rules. You have to be strict with this. So if somebody is not upholding their side of the bargain, they have to be deported. But it's cheaper just to say, look, we can do it the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is we give you some money and you feck off. Okay. The hard way is we force you onto a plane, but that's going to be really expensive. So it makes sense for the government to do this. It's not going to be something, and I covered this in a video earlier today. It's not going to be something that is going to be politically palatable to many people, because people are looking at, hey, you're giving these people up to £40,000 and I can't even access housing. I can't afford childcare, and you're giving these people. It looks. Once I understand the perception, the optics are pretty terrible. I take either, Max. Put Farage on to patrol the channel in a dinghy. Yeah, he loves it. Put all the Brexiteers in dinghies to patrol the channel. Mahmoudi is the Oasis singer, stand-in for Liam. Ever gets sick on tour? I didn't know that. Is that true? Reform will have a field day if with the optics of 40,000 payoffs. So yes, of course. Of course, you have to remember that if Reform get into government, they will do exactly the same thing. It's okay. Obviously the media won't cover it. That's the difference. This is the problem that Labour have. Labour think that they can do things that are unpalatable and the media won't report on it. The media is reporting on it, and they're going to be held to a different standard to any other party. That's something either Labour don't understand or they're starting to understand now. The Conservatives were handing out billions in PPE contracts. Have they suffered any real consequences of that? No. The Conservative Party did this all the time, 4,000 to go to Rwanda. Yes, 3 people went to Rwanda, I think it was. There were more Home Secretaries going to Rwanda than actual volunteers, and they paid them £3,000 to go. Did the right-wing media lose their minds over it? No, because the Conservatives were in power. That's the difference. Specsavers. Been to a jobs fair in Manchester suggested by Universal Credit. It was 18 to 30s. Not the holiday. Think advisor needs to go to Specsavers. Tell the flag lovers that he's an immigrant when he's coming to land. Who's that, Donald Trump or Nigel Farage? If the government gave me £10 million, I'd do it. You'd do what? Leave the country? Then those people who went to Rwanda disappeared, didn't they? Yes, of course. A number of them disappeared. Maybe they're back in the UK. The Rwanda was the biggest joke of all. Yeah, we're going to send people to a place that's not safe, and we know it's not safe because we take people from Rwanda, and we're going to hope that it'll work. And then, of course, it didn't work. Some people had said that what Labour should have done is ran the Rwanda scheme and then let it fail and see it doesn't work. But I don't think, because the Conservatives would have said, hey, you're not doing it right. Like Brexit. Brexit is not the fault. Rwanda is not at fault. It's the people not doing it right. So it would have been a mistake to go through with the Rwanda scheme. Anyway, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. So I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for all the super chats, greatly appreciated. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always. And I'll see you on Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. But before we go, we have our one for the road. So hope you see this. Hope you enjoy this, I should say. It's Dubai based, Dubai themed.
Honestly, Dubai is so much better than home. Like, you don't have to pay tax, which people keep saying is because of all the slaves, but I think that's blown completely out of proportion, if I'm honest. Like, they're not full-on proper slaves. They're just like a bit slaves. Do you know what I mean? And you don't even see them. Which brings me on to my next point. Everyone's good looking because they hide the slaves, so that's great. Honestly, the culture here is amazing, man. And it's really opened my eyes to how, like, we're just doing things really wrong in the UK. But I've got so much money. People don't realise how many opportunities there are outside Great Britain. Honestly, I've washed my hands with the UK, man. I'm done. They've cancelled all the flights and they're bombing good-looking rich white people. Mummy, tell the government they need to get us out. This shouldn't be happening to me. I've got disposable income and white teeth. Tell them I've got a property portfolio, Mummy. And that the bombers, they're acting like investment figures mean nothing. They're sorting evacuation routes now, yeah. Right, tell the government they're going to need to pay for my flights. This entire ordeal has been devastating for my ROI. I know I'm on a heightened income, but I've got no money. It's 500 quid a steak out here. Tell Keir Starmer I only fly BA. Hurry, Mummy, the aircon's not working. I'm boiling like a Christmas ham.
I think it's quite accurate. the greatest comedy is always the one that's closest to the bone. So guys, have a great weekend. I will see you on Friday, same bad time, on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Let's hope that we make it to Tuesday, considering what Donald Trump is doing. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you at the next one. Good night.